Welcome to Chapman on Air. My name is Mia Ray, and I'm here today with the one and only Brian Chapman. Thank you for joining us for our 15-year anniversary special. So most of you watching today already know who Chapman Insurance Group is. You see the billboards with Brian Chapman on it. We see the buses floating around, but we're going to take it back to the early days of Chapman Insurance Group, actually pre-Chapman Insurance Group. So very early days of Brian Chapman. Today we have Brian Chapman Sr., the original, or OG, you might say, here with us. So,
I mean, this is going to be, I think, my most exciting segment. I'm happy to have the OG, as he says, the original Brian Chapman Sr., who I'm named after, Brian Chapman Jr., here with us. So I'm excited for these moments because I don't know what's going to happen here.
Yeah, so I often say the one and only Brian Chapman, but I think I need to change that because it's really not the one and only Brian Chapman.
He's got his fun words to say on that. I say I'm 2.0, he's 1.0. And things upgrade as new versions come out. And I think he says
I'm the original. You're extra crispy.
Extra crispy.
Extra
yeah.
crispy.
So that's that's nothing like a father-son right there. So, Dad, let's talk about just your involvement, and we can go back as far as you want. I think just like a little trip down memory lane.
Well, your mom named you. She wanted to name you after me, and she prayed for a boy, and she got one. You came along, and she said, "Well, I'm naming him after you." Okay, so whatever. And over the years, of course, we've had just an incredible family life. I mean, with Jenny, you, Blake, and our original family, and then years later with the next litter with Joshua and Caleb, it just kind of grew somewhat unexpectedly, but still, it was it created a unique family interaction that I think is really just something that we still share even today. I mean, we're just really, really close. I think we talk to each other almost every day. Yeah. All of us do.
So we call there was a family of 5.
Yeah.
And that pretty much was in existence for about 10 years. And then one slipped by the goalkeeper, and we had a oops, and then we had a whoops.
Oops and whoops,
and
right.
So we have 2 other siblings that were 10 years later.
Yeah.
Which was my first introduction into babysitting and adulting or being a parent, because mom and dad would be like, "Hey, can you feed Josh or can you feed Caleb?" I was 11 or 12, Josh, and then Caleb. I think I was 12, almost 13, and I remember thinking like this was just normal.
Yeah,
families have to keep going, and it was a different dynamic, almost like 2 sets of kids, really.
Yeah.
And I always have to clarify it was with the same mom.
Yeah, right.
Sloan was
I
their
had 2
mom.
families, same mom.
Yeah. So.
But I remember whenever Josh was born, he's 29 and now, but 29 years ago, whenever he was born, I thought it was rather unique that you watched him being born. You saw his birth.
Yeah.
And you were there. That was, I think you were being homeschooled then. It might have been a biology lesson right there, And but I remember the doctor or the midwife having you come over and you cut the umbilical cord loose.
I did for the oldest of the bottom 2.
Yeah.
Josh. Yeah.
I thought that was pretty unique. How many
special.
people would do that?
Yeah.
And maybe were you grossed out by that?
There's certain things I block from memory, and there's other things I remember very well, and unfortunately I remember that one very well.
Okay.
But yeah, special time. I mean, special family moments. Even in high school, seeing you as an insurance agent, a successful State Farm agent, that was always something that provided for our family, and it was always attractive to me.
Right.
And I thought, I never really specifically said, I'm going to do this one day.
Yeah.
But it's like, you're kind of drawn to it, right? Because it's the family. And I was. Even in high school, I felt like, sports was fantastic. School was great. But this is, I think, where I'm headed. And it was always that perspective. I've always kind of had that future look. And then in college, I think you remember, I actually went and got life and health licensed, I believe. Life and health licensed while I was still in college, like just, doing the schooling there.
You got your 440 customer service rep.
I think I got my customer service, but I believe I did my 215, which is a life, health, and variable annuity. I think I did it because I think I didn't pass it the first time, and I used the excuse of it was the final semester, and I was studying for school, and so I didn't have the time to give to it. But you know, and then even before I was done with college, we had a major hurricane impact our area and impact your agency with Charlie, and I sat at your front desk for 3 weeks, you know, as this college kid, and that was like my first real taste of, you know, can I do this? Do I like it? Is this something I'm going to do?
Well, those that day, well, August 13th, 2004, was a day I'll always remember because that's the day that Hurricane Charlie hit. And I remember driving up to Port Charlotte that day about 5 o'clock in the afternoon after the storm hit, and just seeing the carnage there. And even though we've been through some pretty radical hurricanes lately with Irma and Ian, I'd never seen such damage like it was caused by the wind. You were starting or about to start your
2021. Yeah.
What's that?
21. I
Yeah,
think.
you were 20. You're just about to start your senior year at FGCU, and I remember that the need was so great because people were lined up at that time at the office, hundreds deep, and I said to you, because you were licensed at the time with your customer service rep, I said I could really use you before you go back to school. You know, and I mean it's kind of hazy, but you came up there to the office with me one day, and you said, where do you want me to go? I said, just go out there and talk to people at front desk. And so you went to the front desk and you were talking to people, and you started and we ended, and you were up there all day long for like 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. And I remember, like, if you said that you had some previous inclination towards insurance, I never knew about it, because whoever thinks that their kid's going to do what their dad does, you know, you just don't think that. But if you would have told me that, I didn't know it. I really didn't know it. And I think you might have saw it as a means to an end. Yeah. Oh, it's a good job. It's provided for our family. It can provide for mine later on. But I never even heard any thoughts out of you regarding that. But after that event of Hurricane Charlie, it really changed your perspective on what Dad did. And I remember you said, I know what we do now. We help people. Yeah. We are here to help people recover from the unexpected, like a storm. And I remember it was very impactful on you from that perspective. And I think it probably, if the genesis for maybe our family was there for you heading into this at one time and at some time in the future, I guess that would have probably been whenever that thought maybe took flight into being some sort of an actionable thing where you're going to do this. Right. But I think that, I believe, you know, and just looking back at that was a pivotal time for you, because you were right there on the front lines. And it was so funny because I'm the agent. I'm Brian Chapman, the agent. But his name's the same. So everybody's coming in. They say they want to talk to Brian. Well, I'm Brian. So it wasn't the Brian at the time. Now he is the Brian.
He's the Brian,
but he's the Brian. But at the time, he was just Brian Jr. helping out. But, you know, and here's the other thing. He said, Dad, I didn't know anything about insurance, but when you have a storm and you have something like this happen, you automatically are going to be asked every question that possibly could be asked. Yeah. And you may not have the answer, but you've got to go find a resource to get the answer. And I think that's where you really learned more about what insurance does, what it pays for, what's there, and all that. And since then, you've become a scientist with it because you know it so well.
Well, and I think I don't know about that. I sometimes feel like I'll say, you know, Ian, on the heels of Ian right now, you know, with the flooding, right, and the wind, definitely the same wind levels of Charlie in many ways, and much wider wind levels as far as the size of the storm. I've probably learned as much in the last 5 or 6 months post Ian. Really, it's just because it's a whole different part of the the insurance process and the game, and when I look back on those Charlie moments in your office, it was a much simpler time. When I say simpler, like, you know, there wasn't this emailing and texting your claim, texting in your claim. You know, cell phones were kind of on the edge, to date myself, and you know, it was still very much paper. We were still using a lot of paper, and I remember at the top of the form it was 1, 2, or 3 for severity. You know, like literally 1, 2, or 3. And now it's like, details and just a whole nother process. And now clients can submit their own claims and a lot of involvement there. What do you think when we talk about State Farm for you and then me, graduating from college, getting licensed and coming to work for you, what were your concerns when I came to work at your agency?
Initially, I got to say that nepotism was an issue. I kind of felt like, ooh, what's it going to be like having one of my kids work here? And I remembered having a conversation with him.
I remember the conversation.
About what my dad said to me when I was 15 or 16 years old and was going to work at J.C. Penney's. And I remember him just stopping me at the front door as I was going out to ride my bike to the penny store to work. Him saying, look, I told you the same thing.
Story, yeah.
He said, Brian, you're going to have to work harder than anyone just so that nobody thinks the only reason you got your job is because of your name.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was pivotal to me when he said that.
I think the way you said it to me was, you're going to have to work harder than anyone, maybe twice as hard as anyone, just to look like you're working as hard as everyone.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that too.
Oh my gosh. And I've shared that with so many people. And now Caleb, being part of the agency, my youngest brother, him being here 4 years now, I had that same conversation with him. And I said, here's what you have to understand. People are going to think that you're working here and you're Brian's brother and you got the job because you're Brian's brother. And you have to understand this. It was given to me and I'm passing it to you. And I've never forgotten that. I mean, even in the moments I thought, okay, so that means if I work till 7:30 or 8, it's like I'm working till 5.
Right.
Right? It's because I'm only working as hard as everyone else.
Right.
And I think that just probably pushed me even harder than I was already willing to push myself, because it was just constantly, a moment where I said, I've got to do this really, really well, or others will see me as, having a job because dad.
I always felt like that I wanted to hire people who knew what to do without being told. And you certainly fit in that mold, but not that you don't train, not that you don't teach, but when it comes down to decision making, you don't need a lot of direction. You're going to trust their judgment and be able to trust their judgment. And, I certainly always could do that with you. And I gave you a lot to work on. And those 7:30, 8:30, 9 o'clock nights that you were there, I knew it. Other people knew it too. And one of the things that I think probably that I heard about, you probably never heard, but everybody was really, really respectful of what you were doing because you proved yourself. And you proved yourself in that early situation and just in Hurricane Andrew. And I remember one of my employees saying, boy, he's so good with people, Brian. He just really knows how to handle it. But and he doesn't really know much, but he sounds like he knows a lot. But I said, you know what? Work here a day, and you're going to know more than 95% of the people that come in and ask questions.
True. Work here a year, and you'll know 100% more.
Yeah, but I think probably those kind of conversations that we had. My dad taught me that I taught you. And now you've taught your brother. You one day tell your kids, if they ever work for you one day, So that's something that's very, very true. So nepotism was one thing. The next thing too, you asked what was it like? I had a little reservation in you coming to work for me only because I felt too responsible for whatever you did, whether it was good or bad. And I thought about sending you to work for another agent and having you go to work for somebody else that I had a lot of respect for, that I thought could probably mold you, shape you into what you wanted to do. So the nepotism is one thing, but really maybe an uncertainty. I'm going to have to get back out there and work now and just show the little fellow what he needs to do.
Well, it's almost like you're with kids, it's like they don't know how to catch a ball or swing a bat. Yeah. And the only way that they learn, especially really young before T-ball, is if you work with them. And maybe I helped you drive yourself to be better.
You did help me drive myself, and you helped me drive myself to the best years that I had. And so it was really, really, I think pivotal and stuff like that. It all worked out. And so the whatever maybe underlying things that I had thought about that I were concerns, they turned out to be non-concerns.
Okay, good enough. Well, I want to talk in our next segment about the fun times we had when I did work there at the office. It was about 2 years, 18 months to 2 years. and then the start of how we transitioned me leaving State Farm at your agency
Right.
and starting Chapman Insurance Group. So we'll cover that in the next section. How simple is it to get a home insurance quote? We only need 3 things to put an option together for you. 1, we need to know who you are, aka your name. 2, we need to know your address so we can look at the particulars of the home. And 3, we need to know how the residence will be used. Is it your primary home, a seasonal home, or an investment property? That's it. That's all we need. Your name, your address, and what your home is used for. With 35 home carriers, I can guarantee we can find better coverage at a better price. Don't miss out on your savings. Contact us today. There was leadership ability within me to lead others, and ultimately, I think at that point in my very narrow life experiences was, I'm going to start a State Farm agency, and do what Dad did, because I've been here, I understand the business, and I see the success that can be there, and but right before that, I had about 18 months to 2 years at his agency. I don't know if you have any funny stories or moments when I was there for the 18 months or 2 years. Mm-hmm. We had homeowners products we could write.
Right.
We had some commercial business. We were probably
a lot of it.
We were probably State Farm was the commercial king for small business at that time. We had a window right there. It was about like 12 months, 18 months, and we just went out and got it. I don't know if you have any specific stories, how I got my name JR. They kept saying Brian, and they'd say, well, Brian Jr. or Brian Sr., and then they figured, well, let's just change Brian's name to JR, which doesn't make sense to me, but I had this name identity crisis.
I don't remember how it started, though. Probably Terry or something.
I think it was Terry at the office was like, it just JR. And I'm like, I'm not JR. I've never been JR. What is this
That's
name?
your name. Yeah, what's your favorite memory moment from those days?
Well, I think it was really just working together, trying to, put as much business together as we possibly could. And we did a good job of that. And Brian drove a lot of that. I mean, it was like, I would have to say probably my biggest growth years were while he was there. I would say that, and he was pivotal in that and working together with him. It was always a fun time. My company was always good about, providing a lot of trips. We went on a lot of trips together, like London and other places like that, cruising
Rewards
around
trips,
the Mediterranean, things like that. So we had a lot of fun together doing those things too.
And when I started working at the agency, you had basically an entire turnover of your team. Yeah. And so when I came in, there wasn't a lot of legacy with your existing team, or they were turning over. Yeah. And most of it's Charlie. I think the burnout. Yeah. The claims are tough and communication's tough, and there's the heightened emotions from clients, and we have our own issues to deal with our own repairs. And so that was an interesting time where the team had really changed. Some of those people still working for you today, but from that like 05, 06 era. And I was one of them there, not working with you specifically, but still in the business. That was an interesting, just kind of moment with all the new team members and you having to reinvent your agency to training new team members.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Unfortunately, I had at a time there were 6 people that worked there when the hurricane hit. That wasn't counting the effort that you were putting forth when you were there for that short period of time. But within 6 months after the storm, you still got a ton of work going on. It's like where we are right now with Ian. You still got a lot of work out there.
Right.
But by that time, 5 out of the 6 people were gone that worked for me, and they represented probably close to 100 years in experience. So you lost all your experience help. So I remember having to go through the hiring and training process in the middle of the aftermath of a storm, and at the same time being expected to run the agency, without having anything fall through the cracks, so to speak. And that was really, really difficult.
Tough.
You talk about earlier. We were talking about how things change, and technology's changed a lot and stuff like that. I think that technology's driven a lot of the response to claims right now, and things are happening quicker and all that. But back then, when I said you were watching people come in the office and there were hundreds deep, literally, you know what it was like.
Right.
That's not the case now. Everything's more electronic. You're going on your phone, whatever. And I noticed it particularly with Irma, when we had Hurricane Irma come up.
Yeah.
I was there at the office the day after the storm, and nobody showed up, not a single person. And so everybody that had any damage really was clicking in,
texting in.
The claims, they're doing everything from their phone.
Just as we're piecing this journey together, I think we realized, with your blessing, that, hey, there's more that Brian can do, and it may not be at my agency. And so I got into the State Farm pool to become a State Farm agent.
Right.
And that was a big, as you're hiring all these team members, State Farm was expanding their footprint significantly. And so there was a lot of opportunity to start a State Farm agency. And, I was of the perspective, like, this is my life mission. I'm going to be a State Farm agent. I mean, I was literally, committed to that process, and that I thought that was it. We obviously know there's some disappointment in this story where that opportunity got started with about a 6-month investment, and then did not actually come to fruition. And I'm cut deep. I'm wounded by that moment. I think you were too in many ways.
Yeah.
That was a tough time, particularly for me at a relatively young age, because I think at the time I was maybe 24, and I had met with people twice my age, and 24, most people don't have a perspective of who they want to be yet. They really just don't have a good understanding of that. And yet I had been vetted and questioned and challenged, and faked it till I made it moments, and gotten licensed and gotten credentialed, and then that opportunity just kind of fell apart. I mean, you were able to see a bigger picture than even I was able to in those moments. But what were those moments like for you? I know we've talked about this before, but every time we talk about it, it's like it changes just a little bit, at least our history and our perspective of it.
I probably would think disappointment would have definitely been there, but I think that because of sort of like our lifestyle and generally our perspective on life being sort of God-centered, it's hard to swallow that pill sometimes, but God's not going to close the door without opening another one of opportunity.
Right.
And whenever you weren't able to pursue the opportunity with State Farm, that was a difficulty, but I think sometimes you got to look at things through the eyes of faith, and you may not be able to see what's next, but you just know that it's going to be better, and consequences and of things, or just antagonisms of people or pressure of circumstance are going to alter a lot of things in our life. And I think as we adjust to those things with a perspective of faith that it's going to turn out, I think that's probably what kept me going.
Right.
And so I think that it was all a part of a bigger plan.
Right.
That you couldn't see, that I couldn't see, but we both knew could be.
It's like, I know, like, Dad, I know it's going to be better, but right now I'm licking my wounds, and I'm sitting in the corner, and
Which is okay.
And I was already losing my hair at a young age, but I totally went off the deep end. My hair grew out, and I looked like Bozo the Clown for 4 weeks of my life. But like, you go through those stressors, and that's real life. And I was deeply hurt because I thought that was the door I was supposed to walk through. Mm-hmm. Not even knowing another door would open. You're frozen, and I mean, I remember I built a dock on the back of my house. I mean, I'm not a framer or contractor, yet somehow I, Googled back then how to build a dock, and I literally built like this 30-foot by 15-foot dock on the back of my house just because I was like, I need to do something. And we all go through those circumstances in different ways. But so the State Farm door closed for me. I actually came back to work at your agency for about 8 months.
Was that all? Okay.
Yeah, about 8 months. Had a little bit of tragedy in that window too. If you remember, July of 2008.
Julie broke her back.
Yeah, my wife had a broken back situation. So you're right. It was about a year I worked with you. And when I came back for round 2 after going through the State Farm program, So my wife broke her back, 6 month setback there, dealing with that tragedy. And then I, officially started the independent agency and left your agency really around the January, March timeframe of 2009, which is why we're celebrating our 15th year anniversary here now and kind of our conversation. What were your concerns for me leaving and going out and starting an independent agency?
Well, as far as concerns, I don't think I had any. And that would be probably based on like some of the things that you've already hit on. One, your ability to lead others, and two, your just ability to work hard. And and the fact that you put those two together, opportunity is going to come your way no matter what you're doing. And I don't know that I really had any concerns. I think with any business, you get into maybe are you going to be able to get there fast enough? You know what I mean? From a capitalization standpoint, yeah, but you were able to do that. I mean, and looking at everything in hindsight, looking back at it now, it's pretty easy to see it was a success waiting to happen. But I mean, I think probably for the first few years or something like that, when you're trying to build your revenue stream and everything like that, and handle, the dynamics of a changing insurance environment, I think you handled all that really well. I don't know that I really had any real concerns because it was just going to be a matter of time before the success was going to be there.
So I think, I would say I had the same perspective. I knew for what I didn't know that I was going to be able to outwork it. So the work ethic was going to be there, right?
Yeah.
And that's really all I had. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have an office. I didn't have carriers to write insurance with. I didn't have customers. And yet I was like, okay, but I can work through all that. It can't be that complicated. We'll take it one at a time. But I think for me, the blessing of having you in my life in that moment was, it was a constant beacon of hope, because when I was in the grind, like setting up my phone system, I've never done this before. Putting a lease together, I've never done this before. It was like I could still call you and check out and not have to think about it or ask you questions about, hey, have you ever done this? Have you ever done that? Have you ever done this? And I feel like that was so powerful for me, because it was like, even if you didn't know the answer to the question, you could say, well, talk to so-and-so about it.
Yeah, I'd say that.
And I would call them and say, okay, hey, this is my story. This is who I am. And I think just having that, that legacy of leadership being passed down allowed me to take my skill set that was God-given and create, like pour gas on the fire, and just go to another level. I mean, probably, when we look back over the 15 years now, in the early days, you've asked me this, did you ever think that Chapman Insurance Group could be what it is today? Or you've asked me that at different markers throughout, the agency.
Right.
And I think one of the coolest stories on this that I remember was, we started in 2009 and we were leasing space. And just so you know how committed I was, I leased 7 offices, right? I'm starting an agency, 0 clients, and I leased 7 offices. But, I looked at the economics of it. 2009 was a tough year economically. A lot of the U.S. was in an economic decline. Commercial real estate was available. A lot of reasons I did it. But in 2011, in just a short 2 years, we were able to put together buying a building and one of the best Class A buildings in Port Charlotte. And, we bought it from a bank that the FDIC had taken over, different time, that's not as common today. And then I fully renovated. It took me like 8 or 9 months to just, and a lot of headaches. And we moved in, and that was, Memorial Weekend of 2012. And I remember, you were there kind of through the whole process and helping me. Who do you think I should call for drywall, Dad? Have you ever used it? All these simple questions. And then we move in, and we've got, 5 empty offices in this new building. And I remember you saying to me, like, wow, could you have ever imagined, being in this place in 2012 with Chapman Insurance Group? And do you remember what I said back to you?
Yeah. You told me this is just the beginning.
I did, because I already could see that what we were doing was working and where we were going. And then you called me back like the next day or something. You're like, okay, I understand like what you meant by that. Like you're not happy with where you are, but you know where you're going.
Right.
And
but
like,
I remember I
remember
saying, man, I would have been happy with just this. and no, but you were just it was just like the first cog in a major event, a major structural insurance enterprise that, and you saw it that way right from the beginning. And I didn't see that. I thought it was pretty good, right? I could have been content right there, and not you.
I'm going to put that question on you. So you asked him over the years, did you ever think this is where you would be? So you as the dad looking in, did you ever think this is where Chapman Insurance Group would be?
Oh, it's phenomenal. I think he's done a great job. I mean, I'm on the outside looking, in on things, and overall just looking at the perspective of his group, but just the breadth that it's gained is really far more than I thought it would ever be. And not that he didn't have the ability or the desire or the drive to create it, but it's amazing, I think, what he's done. And I'm real proud of him, and I'm real proud of him for taking everything. I mean, even going from the embryonic stages of wanting to be in the industry and seeing the death of a vision to be an agent with my company, and then moving into another direction after he built his dock. And sometimes you got to just take your aggression out on something, and I think he did that. But I mean, just moving on from there to what he's created, it amazes me. I'm stunned by the success. So it's like it's pretty awesome as a dad in the twilight of my career, looking back on all of the fun times and the fun memories, as saying, hey, I'm well pleased with what you've done. I think it's amazing.
Well, I will tell you one thing I do know is that I have a very proud dad of myself and our other siblings, and he tells us that consistently and constantly, how proud he is of all of us. And then he at the same time can, tell us where there are areas where we can improve. But the proudness and his excitement for us, and I think that's the legacy that my dad's created, that I hope to continue, generationally to my family and my kids. And they're all young, 13 and under, but what the future he's laid out, it's kind of like a staircase of steps, and he was the first step, and maybe we're the second or third step, and then maybe our kids could be step 10, and so I think Dad started it, and we're blessed to have him as a man in my life and as my dad. So
I think the pride goes both ways.
Oh, it goes both ways.
It must feel good seeing your son on those billboards.
Without question. All good. I just feel like that I was given an extraordinary opportunity early on in my State Farm career. I mean, it's been amazing. They're a great company. They've been awesome to work for. They've provided for every need for my life and my entire family. And I'm very, very thankful for them. I wouldn't change a thing with what I've done. Even going through a lot of difficult times, I still wouldn't change anything. But I'm thankful for that opportunity that's created. And I think in some way, that's also created an opportunity for you.
It has,
and that
definitely.
it's something that you've taken in a different direction, but built on it in an extraordinary way. I think probably our mutual admiration for each other is pretty apparent. But I'm just really super proud of you. I'm super proud of all my siblings for what they're doing. Yeah. And I'm just glad to be, have had a small part in it over the years. And
I'd say a bigger part than that.
I was going to say that. I think a bigger part. Yeah.
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 No, but it's been fun. It's been a good ride.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Dad. Love you.
My pleasure.
Appreciate
Honor.
your time.
It's on. I told you. You don't know this. This is one last story. Whenever your kid comes to you, and I didn't ever pursue Brian to go to work for me, never, because one, wasn't aware that he was thinking in those directions, and two, when he had that one experience of working for me briefly during an incredibly difficult time, and he did so well at it. Still, I didn't know. But I never approached him about coming to work for me. He approached me about coming to work for me. It speaks to two things. It speaks to the closeness that we share as a father and son and as a family, but it's also quite an honor for your kid to want to do that. Who wants to go to work for their mom and dad? You know, it does. It's just not normal. You know, but it turned out to be that maybe it should be normal. You know, and that just pretty much signifies, you know, the closeness of the relationship and everything. But I was always honored to have Brian want to work for me.
Yeah,
So
it's a pretty special thing.
Yeah.
I
It
think
is.
there might be people watching who are putting in the hard work right now for their kids.
Yep.
And hopefully, you know,
Yep.
their kids will want to follow in their footsteps too. So I think it's inspirational to see, you know, where
Yeah.
that hard work can take you, your
Right.
family, and like he said, you build up on those steps, and his kids will go even further because of the hard work of their parents. So
Right.
That's the hope.
yep.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
well, thanks for letting me be here.
I'm glad you're here,
for
man.
being here.